February 10, 1943. 8:12 a.m., Tokyo, Kasumigaseki District. Naval General Staff Headquarters. You can hear the soft rasp of paper sliding across lacquered tables before you hear any engines at all. The room smells faintly of ink tobacco and winter wool. Outside, the city moves with restrained urgency, but inside this conference room, the war feels orderly, contained within maps, charts, and confident voices. Vice Admiral Shigeru, Fukudome chief of the first section, adjusts his spectacles and taps a pointer against a wall map of the Pacific and Atlantic. Red pins mark American fleet carriers. Enterprise Saratoga Yorktown, names spoken with respect, even caution. Blue pins mark convoy routes. And scattered between them almost as an afterthought are small black dots labeled simply auxiliary carriers. Kaibokan Air Decks, Fukudome says dryly, using a dismissive shorthand. Converted merchant hulls, slow, thin-skinned, a waste of steel. Low chuckles ripple through the room. Rear Admiral Tomiji Koyanagi, operations staff, leans back. They are not carriers, he says. They are floating runways. No armor, no striking power. One bomb and they burn. No one challenges him. At this moment, the Imperial Japanese Navy believes it understands carriers. Carriers are fast, heavily protected, built to strike decisively shokaku, zuikaku, taiho. Anything less is an imitation. Anything smaller is a liability. The Americans, the planners believe, are diluting their strength, spreading aircraft across fragile decks instead of concentrating them where they matter. The assumption settles comfortably in the room. Small carriers are irrelevant. Half a world away, the Atlantic Ocean does not care. February 10, 1943. 3:12 a.m., Mid-Atlantic Gap. Convoy HX-224. You feel the vibration first, low, constant, almost soothing as the escort carrier USS Bogue cuts through heavy seas at barely 18 knots. She is short, stubby, and slow. Her flight deck flexes slightly under the wind. Salt spray freezes along the railings. The night air smells of fuel oil and cold metal. Below decks, aviation machinists mate first class. William Harper tightens a panel on a Grumman TBF-1 Avenger. The engine above him ticks as it cools, metal contracting. The aircraft is folded tight, wings locked upward like clenched fists. There is no glamour here, no polished brass, no spacious hangars. Everything is cramped, functional, improvised. The Bogue is not supposed to exist, at least not in the minds of men like Fukudome and Koyanagi. She was a merchant hull, once C3 cargo ship cut open and rebuilt. No heavy armor, no speed to outrun danger. Her protection lies in something else entirely, something that does not show up on Japanese threat charts. On the bridge, Captain Gale H. McMillan, United States Navy, watches the dark sea through binoculars that show nothing but black water and faint whitecaps. Around him, radar operators whisper ranges and bearings, voices low, disciplined. Surface search radar. Holding steady, a lieutenant reports. No contacts inside, 12 miles. McMillan nods calm. He knows the ocean is not empty. It never is. Somewhere below, German Type 7 U-boats move slowly, patient listening. They have ruled these waters for years, striking convoys beyond the reach of land-based aircraft. This stretch, the Mid-Atlantic Gap, has been their hunting ground, a place where escorts ran blind once their fuel ran low and the sky fell silent. That silence is gone now. On the Bogue, aircraft handlers secure tie-down chains as the deck pitches. The ship's loudspeaker crackles softly with static. Flight operations will begin at first light, weather permitting. The Avenger crews sleep in shifts, boots on helmets within reach. No one aboard believes they are invincible. But they know something has changed. Back in Tokyo, that change is invisible. Japanese naval intelligence reports reach the General Staff weekly. They note American convoy losses decreasing slightly. They attribute it to improved escort discipline, better routing luck. When small carriers appear in reports, they are footnotes. One intelligence officer clears his throat. These escort carriers, they appear to be operating continuously with convoys. Fukudome waves a hand. Aircraft endurance is limited. They cannot project power. They are defensive toys. What aircraft do they carry? Someone asks. Anti-submarine types. Torpedo bombers, obsolete designs, comes the reply. There is a pause. Then another officer adds almost as an afterthought. They seem to launch patrols day and night. A few eyebrows rise, then lower again. Night patrols are not impressive to carrier men who think in terms of massed strikes and decisive battles. Patrols are passive, reactive. They do not win wars. The meeting moves on to fuel allocations and pilot training shortfalls. The black dots remain on the map unremarked. At sea, dawn begins as a thin gray line on the horizon. February 10th, 1943. 6 o'clock a.m. Aboard USS Bogue. You hear the engines before you see anything. The Avenger's right, or 2600. Cyclone roars to life. Prop wash hammering the deck. Crewmen crouch low, goggles frosting. The deck officers' paddles rise and fall in practiced rhythm. Launch. The Avenger lurches forward, rolling across a deck barely long enough to forgive mistakes. The ocean rushes up at the bow. For a breathless second, gravity threatens to win. Then the aircraft lifts heavy, sluggish clawing into the low cloud ceiling. Another follows. Then another. Within minutes, the empty sky above Convoy HX-224 fills with searching aircraft eyes where there had been none. Sonar buoys drop into the sea with soft splashes. Radar scopes glow faintly in cramped cockpits. Pilots scan the water not for ships, but for shadows. Oil slicks disturbances that betray something hiding beneath. Below them in the cold dark, a U-boat commander listens. The escorts are no longer blind. And in Tokyo, in that quiet, confident room, no one yet understands that an entire way of waging war at sea has just been rendered obsolete, not by fleet carriers, not by battleships, but by these slow, underestimated decks that never leave the convoy's side. At this moment, no one believes disaster is forming not for the convoys, but for the assumptions that once protected the hunters. February 17th, 1943. 21:40 hours. Berlin Bendler Block, office of the BDU. The room is dim except for the glow of a desk lamp reflecting off a chart of the North Atlantic. Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of the German U-boat arm, stands with his hands clasped behind his back, listening to a radio officer read decoded reports aloud. The cadence is steady, professional. There is no panic in the voice, yet the numbers themselves are wrong. Contact attempts aborted, the officer reads. Aircraft presence continuous, unable to surface for recharge during daylight. Dönitz frowns. He steps closer, tapping the chart with one finger. Which convoy? HX-224 and SC-118. Similar conditions reported. Dönitz exhales slowly. The Atlantic has always had aircraft. Coastal patrols, land-based bombers. But these reports describe something different. The aircraft are not fading with distance from shore. They are staying, circling, returning again and again. What carriers are involved? Dönitz asks. The officer hesitates. Escort carriers, converted hulls, small. Dönitz turns. Small does not matter if they remain overhead. That thought lingers in the air, uncomfortable and unwelcome. Across the Axis alliance, messages like this are being sent eastward. German naval attachés in Tokyo pass along summaries. Aircraft sightings over convoys. U-boats forced eep for hours. Radio transmissions cut short. Sinkings declining where none should. In Tokyo, those messages arrive wrapped in diplomatic language and strategic assumptions. February 24th, 1943. Imperial Japanese Navy Technical Department, Yokosuka. Commander Masao Koga, a naval engineer, pores over translated German reports. He traces a finger along a diagram showing convoy routes now shaded with overlapping patrol arcs. His brow furrows. These escort carriers, he murmurs to a colleague. They close the gap. The colleague snorts softly. Close a gap with what? A handful of torpedo planes. Koga shakes his head. Not torpedoes, depth charges, radar, persistence. He flips a page revealing a technical description of the Grumman TBF Avenger. Large wings, long range, crew of 3. Not fast, not elegant, built to stay aloft. They do not need speed, Koga says. They only need time, his colleague shrugs. Time does not sink ships. Koga does not answer. At sea, time is exactly what the escort carriers are stealing. March 3rd, 1943. North Atlantic, 14-18 hours. Aboard German U-boat U-575. The ocean above is grey and restless. Inside the pressure hull, Kapitänleutnant Günther Heidemann grips the periscope handles, raising them just enough to break the surface. The image swims into focus. A convoy stretches across the horizon, columns of merchant ships ploughing forward in disciplined lines. And above them, dots, aircraft, circling, returning, never leaving. Heidemann lowers the scope. They are still there, he says quietly. The diesel engines are silent. Batteries drain steadily. The air grows stale. Every hour submerged is a risk. Every attempt to surface brings the roar of engines and the threat of bombs. Hydrophone contact, a petty officer whispers. Aircraft overhead again. Heidemann slams a fist lightly against the bulkhead. This is not how it was supposed to be. The doctrine assumed windows. Gaps. Nighttime safety. The convoy escorts were meant to be outrun, outweighted. Instead, the sky has followed them. Depth charges explode without warning. The hull shudders, lights flicker, paint flakes from the ceiling. The U-boat dives deeper, slipping beneath thermal layers, hiding in the cold where sonar struggles. For now, above the Avenger crew marks, the position drops. A sonobuoy circles patiently. They do not need to kill today. They only need to deny. Back in Tokyo, denial is easier. March 10th, 1943. Naval General Staff meeting. Vice Admiral Fukudome listens as an intelligence officer summarizes the latest Axis reports. Loss ratios. Escort carrier sightings. German complaints. These are operational inconveniences, Fukudome says. Temporary adaptations. The enemy lacks decisive strength. Rear Admiral Koyanagi nods. They spread their aircraft thin. One concentrated strike would sweep them aside, but they are not being struck. Another officer interjects carefully. They are not engaging fleets. They are attached to convoys, and convoys are not decisive. Koyanagi snaps. Silence falls. The logic feels sound. Carriers exist to seek and destroy enemy capital ships. Anything else is auxiliary, secondary. What no one says aloud is that the war is no longer being decided by capital ships alone. Industrial reports arrive showing American shipyards launching escort carriers at alarming rates. Hull after hull slides into the water. Names pile up. Bogue Card, Kopehi, Santi. They are not beautiful. They are efficient. A junior staff officer gestures to a chart. They seem to be operating in hunter-killer groups now. Not just convoy escort. That earns a few raised eyebrows. Hunter-killer Fukudome repeats. Yes, sir. Escort carrier destroyers sweeping ahead of convoys. Actively searching. Koyanagi waves it away. Wasteful. Aircraft fuel consumption alone makes it unsustainable. Yet even as he speaks, reports continue to arrive. U-boats abandoning patrols, submarines unable to surface. Captains reporting exhaustion more than damage. The ocean is becoming smaller. March 18th, 1943. North Atlantic. Night. You can hear the wind whipping across the flight deck of USS Card as an Avenger lifts off under moonlight. No cheering, no ceremony, just routine. The aircraft vanishes into cloud radar, humming softly crew alert. Below, a destroyer escort cuts through black water sonar, pinging rhythmically. The pattern is relentless. Patrol, detect, mark, deny. It does not matter if the submarine escapes. It matters that it cannot attack. This concept never appears in Japanese war games. There is no box for attrition of opportunity. No column for exhaustion. No metric for psychological pressure applied by machines that never seem to leave. In Berlin, Dönitz begins shifting U-boats away from the Atlantic. In Tokyo, the meaning of that shift is misunderstood. The warnings are present, the data is clear, but doctrine is a heavy anchor. At this moment, the escort carriers are still considered a sideshow, an annoyance, something to be dealt with later. Later is approaching faster than anyone realizes. April 12, 1943. 7:26 hours. North Atlantic, west of the Azores. The sea is deceptively calm. A grey mirror broken only by the slow wake of Convoy ONS-5. The merchant ships move steadily eastward, engines thumping in uneven rhythms, hulls stained with rust and salt. Above them, low clouds hang like a ceiling just out of reach. On the flight deck of USS Bogue, Lieutenant Edward Ned Richards, United States Navy, tightens the chin strap of his helmet. The wind cuts through his flight jacket. He can feel the deck vibrate under his boots as the ship turns slightly into the wind. This is not a dramatic launch. No alarms, no emergency, just another patrol. Avenger 3, ready. Richards says into the throat microphone. The deck officer signals. The Grumman CEF Avenger rolls forward. Engine roaring, propeller biting into damp air. The deck seems too short, the bow too close. Then the aircraft lifts heavy and slow, clearing the ship by meters. As Richards climbs through the clouds, the convoy shrinks beneath him. The ocean opens outward in all directions, empty and immense. Inside the cockpit, the radar operator, aviation radio man, second class Frank Delgado, adjusts the scope. A green line sweeps clockwise, nothing yet. But the sweep itself is the weapon. Below the surface, the unexpected is already unfolding. At a depth of 90 meters, Kapitän Leutnant Heinz Schering of German U-boat, U-638, listens to the ocean through hydrophones. The soundscape is crowded, propellers, escorts, and above it all, something new. Aircraft engines. Not distant, not fleeting, they circle, fade, return. Schering tightens his jaw. They are still here, he mutters. His doctrine tells him to wait. The batteries will hold. Night will come. The aircraft will leave. Then he will surface recharge attack. But the hours pass. The aircraft do not leave. At 8:03, the hydrophone operator stiffens. Sonobuoy, splash. Close. Schering feels a chill that has nothing to do with temperature. Sonobuoys mean patience. It means the enemy is not rushing. They are settling in. Above Richards, Banks' left eyes scanning the water through breaks in the cloud. Delgado leans forward. Contact. Bearing 210. Range 6 miles. Possible periscope wake. Richards feels his pulse spike. He levels the aircraft descending. Mark it, he says. The Avenger drops lower. The ocean surface resolves into detail. White caps, shadows, a faint line that should not be there. There, Delgado says. See that disturbance? Richards sees it now. A slight ripple unnatural against the wind. He steadies the aircraft. This is it, he thinks. Not a fleet carrier strike, not a grand battle. Just this quiet alignment of machine and patience. He releases the sonobuoy. It splashes, disappears. Seconds later, the radio crackles. Contact confirmed. Strong underwater signature. Richards does not hesitate. He arms the depth charges. Down below, Schering hears the change. The unmistakable whine of aircraft engines closing, then the thud of something entering the water. Hard to starboard, he orders. Dive to 120. The U-boat tilts, creaking under pressure. Men brace themselves. Sweat beads on foreheads despite the cold. The first depth charge explodes. The hull shudders violently. Light bulbs shatter. Tools clatter to the deck. Another explosion follows. Closer. Schering grips the periscope column. This is not an ambush. It is a search that found him. Above Richards, circles tightly. He is not alone now. A destroyer escort. USS Belknap races toward the contact bow, cutting through the sea sonar, pinging with mechanical insistence. The sky and the sea have become one system. On the Belknap, Lieutenant Commander Arthur McLean watches the sonar trace sharpen. Hold him down, he orders calmly. Do not let him surface. Depth charges roll from the stern, splashing, sinking, detonating in a pattern that leaves no safe direction. Sharing realizes it then. This is not a single pass, this is coordination. For years, submarines have relied on time. Time between air patrols, time between escort sweeps, time to breathe. Time is gone. After 40 minutes, the batteries are draining dangerously. Carbon dioxide levels rise. The crew coughs quietly, eyes burning. Captain, the chief engineer, whispers, "We cannot remain submerged much longer." Sharing nods slowly. He knows the calculation. Surface and fight aircraft and destroyers, or remain below and suffocate. He chooses the surface. At 9:01 638 breaks the waves in a burst of white foam. The conning tower rises. The deck gun crew scrambles. They never get the chance. Richards is already diving. The Avenger screams downward. Machine guns chatter. The cockpit shakes. Tracers stitch across the conning tower. The destroyer opens fire. Shells slam into steel. Flames erupt. Men fall. Within minutes, the submarine is mortally wounded, listing taking on water. The order to abandon ship is shouted, half drowned by explosions. As survivors enter the water, oil spreads across the sea in dark sheets. The engagement is over. Richards pulls up, breathing hard. He looks down at the wreckage, the lifeboats, the smoke drifting across the calm ocean. This was not a fluke. It was procedure. That afternoon, the convoy continues eastward without loss. In Tokyo, a naval attaché receives the German report. A submarine destroyed far from land. Continuous air cover cited as the primary factor. The report is read, filed, rationalized. Escort carriers are still considered weak, but for the first time, the assumption has been tested directly in combat, and it has failed someone's crew completely. The hunters have discovered they are being hunted by something they were taught not to fear. May 7th, 1943, 0645 hours, Imperial Japanese Navy War College, Tokyo. Rain streaks the tall windows as a group of senior officers gathers around a large table cluttered with charts and after-action summaries. The mood is not tense yet, but it is no longer casual. Too many reports have accumulated. Too many anomalies refuse to disappear. Rear Admiral Tomiji Koyanagi clears his throat. "The Germans are losing boats," he says flatly. But their operational discipline has always been questionable. Across from him, Captain Isoroku Sasaki, a submarine tactics instructor, does not nod. He stares at a document in his hands. "They are not losing boats to ambush," Sasaki says. "They are losing them to exhaustion and forced surfacing." Koyanagi frowns. "Explain." Sasaki places the paper on the table. Escort carriers remain with convoys for days. Their aircraft deny surfacing at night and during weather that previously offered safety. The submarines are being hunted continuously. A murmur ripples through the room. Vice Admiral Fukudome leans forward. "Even so, these carriers cannot strike fleets. They cannot defend themselves against surface attack. That may not be their purpose," Sasaki replies carefully. The room goes quiet. The idea is unsettling. Purpose is everything in doctrine. Koyanagi breaks the silence. "We are not Germany. Our submarines operate differently. And our enemy is the United States Navy, not merchant convoys." Yet even as he speaks, another front is forming. May 12, 1943. Philippine Sea. 22:10 hours. Aboard Japanese submarine A-29. Lieutenant Commander Takakazu Kinashi peers through the night haze. The moon is thin, the sea deceptively calm. Ahead, faint silhouettes suggest an American convoy moving south. "This is our opportunity," Kinashi says softly. He orders the submarine to periscope depth. The periscope rises. The image swims into clarity. Merchant ships, escorts, and something else. A flat-topped silhouette, squat and unfamiliar. Kinashi narrows his eyes. "Carrier." His executive officer hesitates. "Sir, that hull shape." Kinashi knows the shape. He has seen it in intelligence briefings. Small, slow, weak. An escort carrier. "They bring toys now," he mutters. He orders preparations for attack. Torpedoes are readied. The submarine creeps closer. Above the escort carrier, USS Nassau cuts through the water, her radar rotating steadily. The night is alive with electronic whispers. On the bridge, Captain Raymond Spruance, Jr. listens to reports. Radar contact intermittent, bearing 180. Keep the patrols tight, he orders. No gaps. An Avenger launches into the darkness, guided by dim arc lights and practiced hands. Its engine roars briefly, then fades. Kinashi does not hear the aircraft at first. He is focused on aligning the periscope. Then the hydrophone operator stiffens. Aircraft overhead. Very close. Kinashi curses under his breath. They launch at night now. He orders a dive. The submarine slips beneath the surface just as the Avenger passes overhead, radar operator peering into the green glow of his scope. Contact, the radio man says. Strong return, bearing steady. Depth charges splash moments later. Explosions roll through the water. The hull groans. Kinashi grips the periscope shaft as the submarine dives deeper. He realizes something critical. The escort carrier did not wait for daylight. It did not react. It anticipated. This is escalation. Back in Tokyo, the War College debates intensify. June 2nd, 1943. Naval General Staff. Industrial reports are now part of the discussion. Numbers that cannot be argued away. American escort carrier production exceeds projections, and officer reports. They are being deployed not only in the Atlantic, but increasingly in the Pacific. Fukudome frowns. For what purpose? Convoy protection, submarine suppression, forward patrol. Koyanagi leans back. They disperse their power. This is inefficient, but they are not losing convoys, Sasaki says quietly. Silence. The logic that once held firm begins to crack. The Japanese Navy has built its identity around decisive battle. Around striking first, striking hard, around concentrated power. Escort carriers represent the opposite. They are persistent, patient, unimpressive, until they are everywhere. Meanwhile, American doctrine adapts rapidly. Hunter-killer groups form around escort carriers. They roam ahead of convoys. They hunt without needing to defend a specific line of ships. Destroyers and aircraft share information seamlessly. Radar, sonar, radio all work in concert. Each engagement refines the process. By June, boat losses reach catastrophic levels. German commanders plead for changes. Dönitz orders withdrawals. In Tokyo, the meaning of that decision is misread. They are conserving strength, Koyanagi insists. Strategic redeployment, but reports from the Pacific show similar patterns. Japanese submarines encounter unexpected air patrols far from land. Surfacing becomes dangerous. Attacks grow rarer. Kinashi survives his encounter. His submarine limps back to base, battered but intact. His report is blunt. The enemy's small carriers deny all freedom of movement. They remain constantly overhead. This negates traditional submarine tactics. The report circulates. It is discussed. It is not embraced. The misjudgment persists because admitting the truth would mean admitting that an entire strategic belief is wrong. And that belief is all that stands between confidence and collapse. July 9th, 1943. 16:30 hours. Truk Lagoon. Heat presses down on the anchorage like a physical weight. The air smells of fuel oil rust and damp tropical wood. Warships lie at anchor in layered rows, their silhouettes wavering in the haze. Beneath the surface, the lagoon is quiet. Too quiet. Inside a low concrete operations building. Vice Admiral Shigeyoshi Inoue, commander of submarine forces in the Central Pacific, listens as a staff officer finishes reading the latest operational summary. The words fall into the room with a dull finality. Submarine patrol effectiveness has dropped by more than 50% since April. Enemy convoys are rarely engaged. Aircraft presence is continuous. Inoue does not respond immediately. He studies a chart showing patrol zones that once promised opportunity and now show nothing but empty sea. Escort carrier symbols dot the margins of those zones like a spreading stain. These carriers, Inoue says at last, they are always there. A junior officer nods. They do not chase fleets. They sit on the sea lanes and wait. That waiting is the turning point, though no one calls it that yet. July 12, 1943. Philippine Sea. Dawn. You can feel the humidity even at altitude. The cockpit of a Grumman Avenger is warm and smells of oil and sweat. Lieutenant James Callahan scans the ocean below through a break in the clouds. The convoy he is protecting stretches behind him, dull gray shapes moving with mechanical certainty. Callahan has flown this patrol for weeks now. He knows the rhythm. Launch, search, circle, mark, return. There is no rush. The ocean cannot escape. Radar clear, his radio man reports. Hold course. Callahan nods. He does not think about enemy carriers or battleships. He thinks about shadows, about oil slicks, about disturbances that do not match the wind. Below him, Japanese submarine. The 177 creeps forward at periscope depth. Commander Hajime Nakagawa watches the same convoy through a narrow lens. He knows the danger. He has read the reports, but doctrine and pride push him forward. This escort carrier cannot threaten us directly, Nakagawa tells himself. The hydrophone operator stiffens. Aircraft above. Nakagawa feels a flash of irritation. They are always there now. He orders a dive. Moments later, the sonobuoy splashes. The Avenger circles patient. The first depth charge detonates far enough to shake but not damage. The second is closer. Nakagawa realizes the truth with a clarity that hurts. They are not trying to kill him quickly. They are trying to remove him from the war. Hours pass. Batteries drain. Air fouls. Sweat drips from faces into the bilge. When Nakagawa finally surfaces under cover of rain, the convoy is gone. The escort carrier remains on the horizon, aircraft still cycling, still watching. He returns to base with no damage and no success. His patrol counts for nothing. Back at Trukanue, reads Nakagawa's report alongside dozens like it. No losses, no victories, just absence. This is strangulation, Inoue says quietly to his chief of staff. Not battle. The chief of staff hesitates. If we acknowledge this as significance, we must change our entire submarine doctrine. Inoue nods. He knows what that means. Retraining crews, altering patrol patterns, admitting that the enemy has found a way to neutralize one of Japan's most valued weapons. He sends a message to Tokyo requesting a strategic review. The response is delayed. July 22nd, 1943. Tokyo, Naval General Staff. The meeting is longer than usual. The temperature in the room rises as voices overlap. Rear Admiral Koyanagi stands by the map pointer in hand. These escort carriers are still vulnerable, he insists. If encountered by surface forces, they cannot survive. Vice Admiral Fukudome nods. They are a secondary threat. Our primary concern remains the decisive fleet engagement. Commander Sasaki cannot stay silent any longer. Sir, with respect, they are not secondary to the war being fought now. All eyes turn to him. The enemy is not seeking a decisive battle at sea lanes. He is removing our ability to influence them at all. Our submarines cannot operate where these carriers exist. Koyanagi stiffens. Submarines are tools, not ends, and tools that no longer function must be addressed. Sasaki replies. The room is silent again. This silence is heavier than before. An intelligence officer breaks it. German submarine withdrawals continue. Dönitz has acknowledged catastrophic losses earlier this year. Fukudome exhales slowly. The Germans failed because of overconfidence. Sasaki meets his gaze. So did we. That is the moment no one wants to admit is real. In August, American escort carriers begin appearing in forward Pacific areas in greater numbers. They protect supply routes, feeding island campaigns. They support amphibious landings by denying enemy submarines any approach. Japanese submarines are forced to operate farther from targets where results diminish further. Training officers report crews growing frustrated. Patrols feel pointless. Morale slips quietly. Inoue submits another report. This one is more direct. The enemy's escort carriers have effectively closed the sea to submarine operations along major routes. Without countermeasures, further deployments will yield minimal results. The report reaches Tokyo. It is read in full. No immediate changes follow. Admitting the truth would mean admitting that speed armor and striking power are no longer enough. That endurance and coverage have become decisive. That small decks with limited aircraft have reshaped the battle space. For the first time, the Japanese Navy stands at a crossroads it does not recognize as such. The turning point has passed, not with an explosion or a defeat, but with quiet patrols that never leave, and with submarines that return home having done nothing at all. September 18th, 1943. 11:10 hours, Tokyo Bay. The morning haze clings low over the water as a launch carries senior officers toward the anchored fleet. The outlines of warships loom through the mist, steel shapes half concealed, as if the bay itself is withholding judgment. Inside the launch, Vice Admiral Shigeyoshi Inoue stares ahead, jaw tight. Hands resting on his knees, the reports he carries feel heavier than paper. Aboard the flagship, the conference room fills quickly. Maps are unrolled. Charts overlap. Voices begin low, restrained. An operations officer speaks first. Submarine contact rates continue to fall. Patrols report near constant aerial presence along major routes. Another adds escort carriers now operate in rotating groups. When one departs, another arrives. Inoue closes his eyes briefly. This is the shock not of surprise, but of confirmation. What was once dismissed as temporary has hardened into a system. Rear Admiral Tomiji Koyanagi stands arms folded. We must consider surface action. If these escort carriers are destroyed, the convoys become vulnerable again. By what force, someone asks. Koyanagi hesitates. Fleet carriers are stretched thin. Battleships are reserved for a decisive engagement that has yet to materialize. Fuel shortages loom. Aircrew training lags behind losses. Silence spreads. September 23rd, 1943. Western Pacific, 0240 hours. Night presses down on the sea thick and humid. Japanese submarine A-36 surfaces briefly diesels, roaring as batteries recharge. Commander Yasuo Tanaka stands on the bridge scanning the darkness. The stars are faint, the horizon indistinct. Then the sound comes. Engines, aircraft engines. Dive Tanaka shouts. Too late. A flare bursts overhead, bathing the submarine in harsh white light. The Avenger follows immediately, engine howling as it dives. Machine gun fire rakes the deck. Tanaka throws himself down as tracers streak past. Depth charges slam into the water seconds later. The submarine plunges, hull groaning, lights flickering. Men grip rails, teeth clenched. Inside the control room, Tanaka realizes the unthinkable. The escort carrier has placed aircraft over a wide area even at night, even far from any convoy. This is no longer defense. This is suppression. Hours later, battered but alive, I-36 limps away. The patrol is over before it truly began. October brings desperation. October the 4th, 1943. Tokyo. Emergency Naval Council. The language shifts. Words like annoyance and inconvenience vanish. They are replaced by attrition and denial. An intelligence officer speaks bluntly. Enemy escort carriers are eliminating our submarines as effective weapons. A sharp intake of breath moves through the room. Vice Admiral Fukudome grips the edge of the table. That conclusion is extreme. Sir, the officer replies, we no longer influence the enemy's logistics. That statement lands with more force than any bomb. Logistics are the war. Supply feeds fleets. Fuel moves armies. Without the ability to threaten convoys, the sea belongs entirely to the enemy. Koyanagi pounds the table once hard. Then we change tactics. Night surface attacks. Wolf pack formations. Sasaki shakes his head. They see at night now. Radar sees through darkness. Aircraft patrol continuously. What of weather, someone asks. Storms. Slow them, Sasaki admits, but storms slow us more. The council fractures into arguments. Some demand aggressive action, others urge conservation. No one has a solution that fits the reality unfolding. At sea, the Americans do not argue. October 12, 1943. Philippine Sea. Afternoon. You can hear the steady rhythm of flight operations aboard USS Card. Launch, recover, refuel, repeat. The deck crews move with practiced efficiency. No urgency, no drama. Lieutenant James Callahan wipes sweat from his eyes as his Avenger lifts once more into the sky. He feels fatigue in his bones, but also certainty. The system works. They see everything. They deny everything. Below, destroyers spread out in a loose screen sonar pings echoing through the water. Contacts are marked, tracked, harassed. Even when submarines escape, they escape empty-handed. Back in Tokyo, the shock deepens into confusion. Reports arrive that American escort carriers now support amphibious operations, providing close air support while still maintaining anti-submarine patrols. They are everywhere. They do everything that matters. The Japanese Navy attempts to adapt. Orders are issued to conserve submarines. Patrol zones shrink. Aggressive doctrines are quietly shelved. Training schedules are altered. Crews practice evasive maneuvers rather than attack runs. The change is subtle, but devastating to morale. Inoue walks the docks at Kura, watching submarines return early, paint-scarred crews, exhausted torpedo racks, untouched. One commander salutes and speaks softly. "Sir, we could not approach. The sky never left." Inoue returns the salute. He has no reply. This is the phase of the war no one planned for. Not defeat in battle, but paralysis. The inability to act without immediate punishment. The enemy has not destroyed the fleet. He has made it irrelevant. Desperate proposals circulate, using submarines as supply runners, sacrificing boats to attack carriers directly. None offer real hope. The escort carriers remain cycling aircraft, closing gaps, erasing darkness. The shock is complete. The confusion unresolved. Decisions are made not from confidence, but from fear of admitting that something fundamental has been lost. November 21st, 1943. 0900 hours. Naval General Staff Headquarters, Tokyo. The room feels smaller than it used to. The same walls, the same tables, but the confidence that once filled the space has drained away, leaving only the scrape of chairs and the low murmur of exhausted men. Maps lie open, their bright symbols dulled by overuse. The original plan is still visible on those maps, but it no longer aligns with reality. Vice Admiral Shigeyoshi Inoue stands at the head of the table. His uniform is immaculate, his posture rigid, but his voice carries none of the certainty it once did. "Our submarine strategy assumed freedom of movement," he says. "That assumption no longer holds. No one interrupts." There is nothing to argue. Rear Admiral Tomiji Koyanagi shifts in his seat. Submarines were intended to weaken the enemy before the decisive fleet engagement. That engagement has not occurred, and may never occur under favorable conditions. Inoue replies. The words hang in the air. For years, every plan has pointed toward a single, massive clash. Submarines, aircraft, surface forces all existed to shape that moment. Now, one of those pillars has collapsed quietly, not in battle, but under constant pressure. November 24th, 1943. Western Pacific. Early morning. The sea is restless wind, chopping the surface into uneven ridges. Japanese submarine I-19 moves cautiously at periscope depth. Commander Toshio Kurosawa watches the horizon through rain-streaked glass. He has been ordered to attempt what few now dare. Penetrate an American supply route. Attack if possible. Observe if not. Almost immediately, the hydrophone operator reports aircraft. They are already here. Kurosawa murmurs. He does not wait. He orders a deep dive. The submarine sinks into darker, colder water. Minutes later, sonar pings echo above. Then explosions. Not close enough to destroy, but close enough to force movement. The pattern repeats. The enemy is not guessing. He is methodical. Hours pass. Batteries drain. Oxygen thins. When Kurosawa finally surfaces under cover of heavy rain, the sea lane is empty. The escort carrier remains somewhere beyond sight, aircraft engines, faint but constant. The patrol ends with no contact, no torpedoes fired. Back in Tokyo, Kurosawa's report joins a growing stack. December 1st, 1943. Imperial Navy Submarine Training Command. Instructors adjust curricula. Torpedo attack drills are shortened. Evasion techniques are expanded. Crews practice silent running deep dives endurance rather than aggression, one young officer whispers to another during a break. Are we still hunters? The other does not answer. December 5th, 1943. Central Pacific. American escort carriers now operate in overlapping zones, protecting not only convoys but entire regions. USS Bogue, USS Card, USS Nassau and others cycle through patrol areas with mechanical regularity. Aircraft take off and land from dawn until night, radar eyes never closing. Lieutenant James Callahan no longer remembers his first patrol. They blur together now. The ocean feels smaller, predictable. Another quiet day, his radio man says. Callahan knows what quiet means. It means the enemy cannot approach. It means somewhere below, submarines wait burning batteries accomplishing nothing. Back in Tokyo, the collapse becomes undeniable. December 12th, 1943. Naval General Staff. An intelligence summary is read aloud. Submarine sinkings of enemy shipping have fallen to negligible levels in primary theaters. Escort carrier presence correlates directly with loss of operational freedom. Koyanagi closes his eyes. Then our original plan is no longer viable. The admission is simple. The impact is enormous. Without effective submarines, American logistics flow unimpeded. Fuel reaches forward bases. Troops arrive on schedule. Equipment piles up faster than it can be destroyed. The decisive battle, once imagined as inevitable, drifts further into the future, increasingly unfavorable. December 18th, 1943. Kure Naval Base. Inoue walks along the pier as a submarine returns early diesel exhaust, staining the air. The crew disembarks silently. No victory markings, no celebration. The captain approaches, salutes. Sir, we were unable to approach the target area. Inoue returns the salute. I understand. He watches the crew disperse. Their shoulders slump. They are not defeated men, but they are no longer effective ones. The original plan has not failed in a single moment. It has dissolved. Piece by piece, patrol by patrol, escort carrier by escort carrier. There will be attempts to adapt. There always are. But the foundation is gone. At sea, the escort carriers continue their work indifferent to doctrine, loyal only to the task of denying the enemy space to breathe. The collapse is complete, though its full consequences have yet to arrive. January 14th, 1944, 0820 hours. Tokyo, Naval Technical Department. Cold air seeps through the corridors as officers gather around a table crowded with blueprints and handwritten notes. The atmosphere is tense but purposeful. This is not denial anymore. This is reaction. Commander Maso Koga points to a rough diagram of an aircraft carrier hull. If escort carriers are the problem, then we must neutralize them. How asks a captain from the air staff? Koga hesitates. Specialized attack units, night surface strikes, concentrated submarine ambushes when carriers rotate. The proposals sound bold. They also sound late. Fuel shortages complicate every plan. Training hours are limited. Aircraft numbers are insufficient. Escort carriers are not alone. They are wrapped in destroyers, radar, constant air patrols. Still orders go out. Something must be tried. January 22nd, 1944. Western Pacific. Night. The sea is dark and restless. Japanese submarine I-168 surfaces, cautiously diesels, rumbling softly. Commander Kenji Watanabe scans the horizon. He has been given rare permission to attack aggressively. We will strike the carrier, he says quietly. Minutes later, the hydrophone operator freezes. Aircraft approaching. Multiple. Watanabe curses. The escort carrier has anticipated him again. Before he can dive, flares bloom overhead. The night turns white. The Avenger dives, machine guns firing. Watanabe orders an emergency dive as bullets rake the deck. Depth charges follow. The submarine plunges, hull creaking, lights flickering. The attempt ends in retreat. February brings more desperation. February the 3rd, 1944. Truk Lagoon. Vice Admiral Inoue listens as staff officers outline a plan to use submarines as decoys, drawing escort carriers away from convoys so surface raiders might strike. And if the carriers do not pursue, Inoue asks, then the submarines will be lost, comes the honest reply. Inoue closes his eyes. He knows the cost. The plan is approved anyway. February 11th, 1944. Philippine Sea. Submarine 144 deliberately reveals its presence, surfacing briefly near a known patrol area. Radar detects it instantly. Aircraft launch within minutes. The carrier remains on station. The decoy fails. I-44 dives and does not return. Meanwhile, American escort carriers expand their role even further. March 1st, 1944, near New Guinea. You can hear the roar of engines as Avengers launch in quick succession from USS Nassau. The deck crews move with urgency but without panic. This is routine now. Lieutenant James Callahan banks his aircraft toward a reported contact. He feels no excitement, just focus. Below, Japanese submarine row. 109 attempts to approach a supply convoy supporting amphibious operations. It never gets close. Sonobuoys mark it. Destroyers converge. Depth charges roll. The submarine survives but is forced to withdraw. The landing proceeds uninterrupted. Back in Tokyo, the consequences stack up. April 9th, 1944. Naval General Staff. A logistics officer speaks in a low voice. Enemy supplies to forward bases have increased significantly. We cannot interdict them. Rear Admiral Koyanagi grips the table. Then we attack the bases themselves. With what comes the reply? Silence. Escort carriers now protect not only sea lanes but also staging areas. They provide air cover where no airfields exist. They follow the advance step by step. Japanese attempts to adapt fall into patterns the enemy already understands. Submarine commanders are instructed to conserve torpedoes. Patrols become reconnaissance missions. Crews learn to avoid contact rather than seek it. Morale erodes quietly. April 27th, 1944. Kure. Inoue stands on a pier watching another submarine depart. The crew salutes smartly. Their faces are young, determined. They still believe they might matter. He returns the salute and turns away. He knows the truth now. The window for recovery closed months ago. Escort carriers were dismissed when they were weak. Now they are entrenched, numerous, and supported by an industrial machine that never pauses. Every attempt to counter them reveals the same reality. They are not targets in isolation. They are nodes in a system. Destroy one and another fills the space. May 14th, 1944. Central Pacific. American hunter-killer groups operate freely. They range far ahead of convoys seeking submarines before they ever threaten shipping. The ocean feels mapped, indexed, controlled. Lieutenant Callahan lands his Avenger after another long patrol. He climbs down from the cockpit legs, stiff shirt soaked. "How was it?" a deckhand asks. "Quiet," Callahan replies. Quiet now means dominance. Back in Tokyo, that word never appears in official documents. But everyone feels it. Attempts to recover what was lost continue on paper. New tactics, new orders, new sacrifices. None change the fundamental fact that escort carriers have removed uncertainty from the sea. And without uncertainty, submarines are simply targets waiting to be found. The effort continues because stopping would mean admitting final defeat in a domain once believed secure. June 19th, 1944. 0540 hours, Philippine Sea. The horizon is already alive with motion. The sea reflects the pale light of dawn, broken by the wakes of dozens of ships moving in disciplined formation. American transports, oilers, ammunition ships all advance steadily westward. Above them, aircraft engines hum in layered patterns, never silent, never hurried. From the bridge of the escort carrier, USS Fanshawe Bay, Captain John R. Perry watches the sky fill with Avengers and Wildcats. The deck crew moves with quiet precision. There is no sense of anticipation. This is not a battle. This is protection. Lieutenant James Callahan lifts off again, feeling the familiar pull of gravity as his Avenger claws into the humid air. He knows the routine so well it has become instinct. Patrol sector assigned, radar on, sonar buoys ready. Below the surface, far ahead of the convoy, Japanese submarine I. 10 lies motionless at depth. Commander Shigeo Yamazaki listens to the sea. The sounds are overwhelming. Propellers in every direction, aircraft overhead. Sonar pulses ripple through the hull like distant thunder. Yamazaki knows the numbers. He knows the reports. Yet the reality feels heavier than any briefing. They cover everything he whispers. Hours earlier, Yamazaki had hoped to reach the transport lanes supporting the American advance toward the Marianas. Now he understands that he will not even see them. A sonar buoy splashes above, then another. The pattern tightens. The ocean itself seems to betray him. Depth charges detonate, not enough to kill, enough to force movement. Yamazaki orders a deeper dive. The submarine sinks metal groaning under pressure. Batteries drain. Air grows foul. Sweat beads on faces. This is not combat. This is containment. Above, Callahan circles calmly. His radio man tracks the contact. Destroyers close in their sonar, painting a precise picture of the trapped submarine. Callahan feels no triumph, only certainty. The enemy is here and cannot escape. After 4 hours submerged, Yamazaki makes his decision. He will withdraw. There is no attack to be made, no opening to exploit. Only survival remains. When I-10 finally surfaces under cover of a squall, the convoy is long gone. The escort carrier remains somewhere beyond the rain aircraft, still cycling, still watching. Yamazaki returns to base without firing a torpedo. June 22nd, 1944. Tokyo. Naval General Staff. The atmosphere is subdued. No raised voices, no arguments, only reports. An intelligence officer speaks slowly. Submarine operations against enemy logistics during current campaigns have been ineffective. Escort carriers maintain continuous aerial denial. Vice Admiral Fukudome does not interrupt. He does not challenge the phrasing. Rear Admiral Koyanagi sits rigid, hands folded. He looks older than he did months ago. Commander Sasaki breaks the silence. We have reached the point where our submarines no longer influence the outcome of operations. No one objects. The realization settles over the room with crushing weight. It is not dramatic. It does not announce itself with alarms or explosions. It is simply understood. The sea has been lost, not because of a decisive battle, not because of superior ships in a duel, but because of endurance, coverage, relentless presence. Escort carriers were never meant to win glory. They were meant to remove options, and they have done so completely. June 27th, 1944, Truk Lagoon. Vice Admiral Inoue walks along the pier at dawn. The water is calm, reflecting the silhouettes of submarines at rest. He stops beside one and runs a hand along the steel hull. Once these boats were instruments of opportunity, of initiative. Now they are confined by the sky. A young officer approaches. "Sir, the crew is ready." Inoue nods. He watches as the submarine departs, slowly slipping out of the lagoon toward the patrol areas, already saturated with enemy aircraft. He knows what will happen. The boat will evade. It will hide. It will return. The escort carriers will still be there. July 3rd, 1944, Central Pacific. American escort carriers operate in depth. Layers of patrols overlap. Aircraft rotate seamlessly. When one carrier turns back to refuel, another takes its place. The system has matured. Lieutenant Callahan lands his Avenger and climbs down, muscles aching. He leans against the fuselage, catching his breath. "Any action?" someone asks. "No." Callahan replies. No action means success. Back in Tokyo, the war presses closer to home. American forces advance island by island, supplied without interruption. Fuel, food, ammunition arrive on schedule. The decisive battle is no longer a choice. It is a necessity under increasingly desperate conditions. The realization is now complete. The dismissal of escort carriers was not a minor misjudgment. It was a foundational error, one that cannot be corrected with tactics or bravery. The sea lanes belong to the enemy, and with them the future shape of the war. No announcement is made, no declaration issued, but every officer in the room understands the same thing at the same time. It is too late. August 8th, 1944, 6:15 hours, Kure Naval Base. The morning air is heavy with humidity and coal smoke. Dock workers move quietly along the piers, their voices subdued, their movements automatic. Warships sit at anchor in neat lines, but there is no sense of readiness in their stillness. They wait, not for action, but for orders that no longer promise change. Vice Admiral Shigeyoshi Inoue stands on the edge of the quay, watching a submarine ease back into harbor. Its hull is streaked with rust and oil. The crew emerges slowly, faces hollow uniforms stained with sweat and grime. There is no urgency in their movements. No relief either. The commander approaches and salutes. "Patrol complete, sir." Inoue returns the salute. Any contact? The commander hesitates. Aircraft were present continuously. We were unable to approach. Inoue nods once. That is all that needs to be said. Across the Pacific, the consequences unfold relentlessly. August 15th, 1944. Central Pacific Supply Route. You can hear the engines of dozens of transports beating steadily through the water. Oil tankers follow close behind their cargo, vital and untouched. Above them, Avengers and Wildcats circle in endless rotation. The escort carriers maintain station without drama, without pause. Lieutenant James Callahan flies another patrol, eyes scanning the ocean through heat shimmer. His radar shows nothing unusual. It rarely does now. "Quiet sector," his radio man says. Callahan knows what quiet means. It means the enemy is gone. Not defeated in a clash, but removed from relevance. Destroyers below continue their sonar sweeps, disciplined and methodical. Even without contact, the pattern never stops. The system has no off switch. September the 3rd, 1944. Tokyo, Naval General Staff. The room is sparsely occupied. Several chairs remain empty, their occupants reassigned or killed. Maps still hang on the walls, but no one gestures toward them anymore. An intelligence officer reads the latest summary. Enemy logistical throughput to forward bases has increased beyond our capacity to disrupt. Submarine operations have yielded no strategic effect. No one challenges the report. Rear Admiral Tomiji Koyanagi sits silently, eyes fixed on the table. The doctrine he helped defend has collapsed around him. The decisive battle has not come, not because the enemy avoided it, but because he no longer needs it. Commander Isoroku Sasaki stands near the window. He does not speak. There is nothing left to argue. The realization that arrived months earlier now hardens into permanence. Escort carriers were dismissed as weak substitutes. In practice, they have erased the uncertainty submarines relied upon. They have sealed the sea lanes with aircraft that never leave and sensors that never sleep. September 18th, 1944, Truk Lagoon. Vice Admiral Inoue boards a launch for what may be his final inspection. The lagoon is quieter now. Fewer submarines remain. Fewer crews rotate through. 8. As the launch passes one of the boats, Inoue notices chipped paint on the conning tower. The scars of depth charge shock, not battle damage. Survival damage. He steps onto the deck and addresses the assembled officers. "You have done your duty," he says evenly. "The conditions of war have changed." He does not mention victory or hope. He does not need to. October 1st, 1944. Philippine Sea. American escort carriers continue their patrols as the war moves closer to the Japanese home islands. Amphibious operations are supported seamlessly. Supplies arrive in volumes once thought impossible to protect. From the deck of USS Fanshawe Bay, Captain John R. Perry watches another convoy pass safely beneath his aircraft. He knows this ship will never be remembered like the great fleet carriers. No dramatic battles, no famous strikes. Yet he also knows that without these decks, none of the larger victories would have been possible. October 20th, 1944. Leyte Gulf approaches. The sea is crowded with American ships, transports, escorts, carriers large and small. The scale is overwhelming. Japanese submarines attempt to intervene. Few succeed. Most are detected early, harassed, relentlessly driven away or destroyed before they can threaten anything of value. The escort carriers remain overhead, their aircraft filling the sky from dawn to night. For the Japanese Navy, the cost becomes unmistakable. Fuel shortages deepen as tankers reach American forces unmolested. Airfields fall because supplies cannot be denied. Pilots fly fewer hours. Crews train less. Ships wait idle. The dismissal of escort carriers echoes through every subsequent failure. November 12, 1944. Kure, in a way, receives his reassignment orders. He reads them once, folds the paper carefully, and places it in his pocket. His career has not ended in disgrace, but in quiet displacement. He walks the docks one last time, passing the submarines that remain. He rests his hand on the railing and looks out at the harbor. Once he believed submarines would shape the war's outcome. That belief was not foolish. It was incomplete. December 1944. Pacific Ocean. Lieutenant Callahan flies his final patrol before rotation home. The ocean below is calm, almost peaceful. He knows there are no submarines within reach. He knows the convoy will arrive intact. As he turns back toward the carrier, he thinks briefly about the men below the surface who never had a chance to fight him properly. He feels no pride in that, only acceptance. Back in Tokyo, no formal reckoning occurs. No declaration of error is issued. The war continues under worsening conditions. But within the Japanese Navy, the understanding is complete and irreversible. Escort carriers were not weak substitutes. They were something else entirely. They closed the air gap. They denied space. They made the sea a controlled environment where submarines could no longer exist as weapons. By the time this truth was fully understood, the system was too large, too mature, and too entrenched to challenge. The consequence is not a single defeat, but a cascading loss of initiative that cannot be reversed. The ocean has been claimed.